Hello, my name is Ben Yankee with Golden Harvest Agronomy and Action Research. Today we'll be talking about seed treatment options for Pythium control. I'd like to start off by underlining the importance of good stand establishment. Doing so ensures that your crop will canopy earlier and have less competition from weeds. Also maximizes yield potential and lessens the concern for replant issues. With Pythium specifically, we're targeting those conditions earlier in the season where cool and wet soils favor disease development. Best protection at this time of the year usually comes through a seed treatment. Pythium is the leading cause of seedling loss in corn. In fact, it's more damaging than Fusarium and Rhizoctonia combined. Pythium fungi overwinter in the soil and in plant material. They're known as water molds because they thrive in wet soils. And they can be active over a wide range of temperatures, both hot and cold. Some of the symptoms of Pythium you can see in the upper left picture here with the stunted chlorotic growth there, wilting and dry leaves as well. In the picture to the right, a plant of abnormal plant size. And then the lower left picture with brown root tissue when you dig up young seedlings. All of these issues can lead to reduced plant stands. It's important to note that Pythium isn't just a singular problem. And in fact, there's over 35 Pythium species that exist. About half of these are common in Midwest corn and soybean fields. It's also important to note that their disease impact varies by species. You can see the more common species listed in the graph off to the right here. And also with each one of these species, there's a different level of sensitivity to seed treatment active ingredients. And so what we're looking in the graph here are three active ingredient components of methanoxam, ethoboxam, and picarbutyrazox, noted by the different colored bars in the graph. What's especially important to note is the length of these bars that denotes the level of control. You can see, for example, ethoboxam has a couple of Pythium species without really good control. As alluded to on the last slide, Syngenta is introducing a brand new active ingredient, picarbutyrazox. We're expecting registration soon, and it will be marketed as Viantis seed treatment. It's a brand new mode of action with no known cross resistance of existing Pythium species. It's highly potent and effective at low use rates. It's a brand new molecule that is effective against all Pythium species as well as some Phytophthora. Offers a very robust Pythium protection compared to existing protection molecules of metalaxyl or ethoboxam. It's excellent compatibility with other seed treatment products. You can see a visual off to the right here, picarbutyrazox on the top, ethoboxam on the bottom, and the visual representation of Pythium control there on one of the more common Pythium species. This is another great visual noting two common Pythium species compared to an untreated check, the active ingredient metalaxyl, and the active ingredient picarbutyrazox. Picarbutyrazox showed greater control over two Pythium species compared to the untreated check. I'll talk a little bit about our 2020 Agronomy in Action soybean trials. We had 8 trial locations, 2 varieties per location, with relative maturity groups from early group 2 to late group 3. Our treatments were simply an untreated check, Cruiser Max Vibrance, and Cruiser Max Vibrance with the addition of Viantis. What we saw was an increase in yield potential from 2 to 4 bushels at 3 locations where we observed stand loss. Those locations are noted in the orange bars here you can see, and the different levels of yield at those locations. Off to the very right in the blue bars where we average all of our locations combined, we still see an increase, although not quite as robust. Where did this yield increase come? Well, it's from increased plant stands. And in fact, compared to the untreated check, as you can see here in the graph on the right, Viantis offered over 10,000 more plants per acre at sites where we saw higher disease presence. And compared to Cruiser Max Vibrance alone, saw over 1,000 plants per acre increase. If we shift gears and talk a little bit about our corn trials that we did, our objective here was to determine if Viantis can offer additional levels of Pythium protection in the areas of stand establishment, stand uniformity, and yield enhancement. We also wanted to understand how Viantis compared to ethoboxam as a second and different mode of action. If we look at the impact of Viantis on corn plant stand, what we saw was that Viantis improved final stand at locations with higher disease presence by over 9,000 plants per acre. This is denoted in the graph on the right here. You can see our treatments on the right, Cruiser Max Corn 500 with Vibrance. In the middle bar, Cruiser Max Corn 500 with Vibrance plus ethoboxam. And then the left bar, Cruiser Max Corn 500 with Vibrance and P-carbutrazox or Viantis. Note the difference in emerged plants where we saw stand loss. Concerning uniformity of a corn plant stand, Viantis significantly improved our uniformity in plant size. And you can see this in the graph on the right here, where we're looking at the number of later or weaker emerging plants. And you can note in our control, the Cruiser Max corn with Vibrance, we saw almost 50% of plants that were either weak or late emerging. The addition of ethoboxam reduced that to about 40%. But in the bar on the right, the addition of Viantis to Cruiser Max corn 500 with Vibrance significantly reduced the number of later emerging plants, so led to a very uniform plant stand. When we look at the combined effect that Viantis had on plant population and uniformity of our plant stand, we saw that Viantis increased grain yield at over 30 bushel at sites where we had significant stand loss. You can see that in the graph on the left here. And it's also important to note that where we didn't see as much disease pressure, we still saw about a 5 bushel per acre yield bump with the addition of Viantis. What can we do to manage against Pythium? If you look at the disease triangle off on the right here, we can already assume we're going to have a host crop out there. And the pathogen, more than likely, is probably there. And so the only other leg on the triangle left for us to look at is environment. And so how do we manage that? We can look at things like soil drainage. Again, that key ingredient that Pythium likes is excessive water, loves those wet feet. So by improving your drainage, we can create a less favorable environment. We can also look at weather conditions during planting. Looking out ahead and actually holding off planting before an extended cool and wet forecast can be a good thing if we're trying to manage against Pythium. Striving to evenly distribute crop residue at harvest can also be important because we can eliminate some of those heavier concentrations of residue that can create temperature and moisture variation in our field. And finally, we can consider adding Viantis as a seed treatment against Pythium to act as a second mode of action of protection. So just to summarize, damage from Pythium species is one of the most harmful diseases in corn and soybeans. Protecting our young seedlings can lead to higher yields through better stand uniformity and plant health. We saw better plant establishment from Viantis and increased yields where higher disease presence was observed. Thank you.